At the moment, we have more soldiers dying at the hands of suicide than we do an actual enemy in Afghanistan or Iraq. So we've got to find ways to help train the force to be able to counterbalance that enemy, because it is becoming incredibly pervasive for us.
My name is Specialist Rasmussen, and 7 months ago I tried taking my own life by shooting myself in the head. Bullet is still on the back of my skull. Jaw was completely shattered, still is. I had the options. I had the care, I just didn't take it. I thought I'd be better off, or manlier, or what do you want to say, do it just to help myself. Build up my kids and wife, my parents, brothers. I didn't want to make it someone else's problem, you know? It wasn't their problem. Being in limbo, job sucking, trying to advance myself in a career. Started drinking pretty heavily during the day, after work, which wasn't making a good situation at home. I come home, see you go to work. More like a, hey, how you doing? Bye, I love you. Knowing I had a family to take care of, and I failed them was finally the breaking point. In this green notebook, it's my family. There's a letter for each person, saying sorry and how I was going to be better off, and I turned the gun on myself and shot myself.
I've never met anybody in all of my interventions who truly wanted to die. What they want is for the pain and the way that life is going to stop, but they typically feel powerless or unable to change it. Sometimes they feel trapped. They just don't know what to do. There's all kinds of places where we find the support network of family and friends to help us deal with stress.
And sometimes I honestly think it'd be easier to lose guys over there. You don't expect to lose a soldier when you're home, back with your families.
Most Army leadership right now is extremely supportive of behavioral health. They know that with this population of soldiers who have come through the past 10 or 11 years, with everything that's affected the Army and the soldier on the ground in terms of the amount of conflict going on in the world, that this has the potential to take a real toll on soldiers.
While she was in Afghanistan, she called me sometimes twice a day. She would go out with the chaplain, and she went to carry the rifle and protect him and to assist him with whatever needs he wanted. They went to the hospital on regular visits. She shared with me how horrible it was to see the Afghani kids that were in the hospital and that were, they had been injured. I kept saying, well, I want to hear about this when you get home. So she came home, she came into the living room and she sat down and she says, okay, I'm going to answer all the questions you want to know about Afghanistan, and then this is going to be a closed subject. I'm never going to speak of it again. Things were not going well. She called and I was in this meeting, so I couldn't really interrupt, and I chose not to answer it. Maybe an hour later, she called again. Again, I chose not to answer it, and I had a wedding I was going to. So she called and I said, well, I'm sorry I couldn't talk to you. And she said, I just wanted to tell you that I love you. And I said, well, I love you too, Galena. And I said, we'll talk later. And she said, goodbye. She never ever said goodbye. We always said bye-bye, see you later, something like that. This was a very formal goodbye. My antenna went up and I said, now that sounded ominous. And she's one for drama. Probably not. I'm sure it's okay. So I dismissed it. She did not call me that night. The next morning at 6 a.m., a young man who lives with us heard a knock at the door, came and told us, there is some military people here who want to see you. They told me that she had taken her own life, that she had shot herself.
If they always say they're on top of the world, but today they say they're just fine, something has changed within them. And that is an invitation for someone to ask them, hey, what's going on? It seems like you're not your typical self today.
Does something feel a little bit out of kilter with somebody? My gut twinged for some reason. There was some reason why I felt like I needed to explore this further, and I don't know what that is, but I am going to go ahead and make sure I do a little bit more follow-up.
Great guy, pretty outgoing. He and I were not really close friends, but worked together. We went fishing a couple times. Started to notice, he was kind of down in the dumps a little bit, and I kind of let it go for a couple of days. I thought, everybody has a bad day. So after a couple of days, I just direct approach. I just walked up to him and says, John, hey, what's eating you? And the guy just opened up like, here it is. His wife, had just told him that she wanted a divorce, and it was going to be a nasty one, and bill collectors were, hounding at his door, and it was a series of personal problems that seemed to have compounded themselves to the point where it was about to burst. And had I not walked up and just asked the guy, hey, what's eating you? You want to talk about it? And given him that outlet to just let some of that pressure go, who knows what may have happened.
You just have to be tracking people enough to kind of get a good sense of who they are.
And by being able to talk about it, they're able to then get the concerns and issues out in front of them, and sometimes what they thought was such a terrible, horrible thing, they realized wasn't that big a deal in the big picture after all. But they needed to be able to talk about it to come to that realization.
Because the prevention of suicide, it starts at the very top. It starts as leaders. It starts as commanders. It starts as non-commissioned officers. You have to know your soldiers. You have to be cognizant of what's going on in your unit. And you have to be able to recognize warning signs of suicide.
When leadership asks a squad leader, how are your people doing? And that squad leader says, everybody's good. Well, what do you mean good? And they can't really go much further. That would be something to drill in on. Get in enough depth with the squad leader that the commander can be more assured that the squad leader seems to be aware of what's going on in their soldiers' lives. Sometimes what happens with leadership is that they do drill in to some degree, and some service members push back, don't want to reveal some things. That might be a sign too, that basically that there's enough stresses that it needs to be just looked at a little bit harder.
Those soldiers are the ones that you have to ask them, because otherwise they won't say anything and they'll just keep that stuff bottled up inside them. I mean, there's always going to be the guy or the gal that no matter how much you ask, no matter which direction you approach it from, they're going to back themselves into a corner and not want to open up. But you just gotta be persistent.
I think it's very important to know the ins and outs of your soldiers. If they feel it's important enough to tell you, it's something that you need to hold close to you. And once you know your soldiers, you'll be able to notice whenever they're not being themselves. I talk to my soldiers all the time. I want them to feel comfortable around me, and so that they can tell me whatever's on their mind.
When a soldier feels like their leadership has an investment in them, that they care about how that soldier's life works, then that soldier's more willing to talk, which then gives the leader an enormous amount of information to know how to pinpoint where the struggles are and get that soldier the assistance that he or she specifically needs.